Now that Bob's here, and now that it's 7 o'clock, I'd like to call this March 26th Board of Supervisor meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge of allegiance to our flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, now if you could please join us in a moment of silence. Okay, first item on the agenda is citizen participation. I'm sorry, this is, first portion is citizen participation. This is for items that are on the agenda.
Will we be able to ask questions of the auditor after the end of the presentation?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Approval of the minutes. This is from the February 27th meeting. I had one small thing, and Daisy already fixed that. So other than that, I am fine with the minutes. Does anybody else have a comment, addition, or correction?
Fine to me.
I'll make a motion to approve those minutes. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Brad, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Minutes are approved. Persons to be heard. First up is Teena Curnow with Smith, Elliott, and Kearns. Thanks again, Teena.
Yeah, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So I'm here to present the results of the audit. Usually we come in April, even though we normally have the audit essentially done around this time, but it just kind of worked out with the timing of your meeting that we were able to come tonight. So what you have in front of you is just a very brief summary of the financial statements and the letters that you also have in your packet tonight that Daisy handed out. So my presentation isn't going to go over line items. It's not going to go over significant details. We already did that when we had what we call our draft meeting with Daisy to kind of go over the detailed results of the audit. What I'm just going to present to you tonight is very high level results of the audit, some key variances from the prior year, and just an explanation of how you ended up with the year for 2023, and then the results of our audit procedures. So as far as the audit itself is concerned, in a summary, you did have an unmodified audit opinion. So the beginning of the financial statements where we have our independent auditor's report over the rest of the financial statements, it's an unmodified opinion, which means it's a clean audit opinion. It means that there wasn't anything we found in our audit that required us to modify the opinion. So everything that's included in the financial statements is what we believe to be materially correct based on the activity that happened for the township in 2023. You had a surplus in all of your funds, anywhere upwards of about $100,000 down to $200 in your solid waste fund, but it was a positive year across the board for all of the funds for the township. And there were no findings. So even if we have an unmodified audit opinion, there could be what we consider an internal control deficiency that needs reported within the financial statements or in what we call our management letter. That would be, while we don't give an opinion on your internal controls, we are required as part of the audit to obtain an understanding of what controls you have and get an understanding of how they're being placed in service. So if there's anything that we find that we believe either isn't happening that should, or we have suggestions for improvement, we would communicate them to you this year, other than just the annual reminder that you do have a very small staff, office staff, that has responsibilities across the board for reporting, recording, reconciling, reviewing, just reminding the board of your due diligence to make sure you're reviewing information and approving information and helping them essentially make it easier for them to do their duties and not have as much onus on them, that you're just making sure you're asking those questions and getting the information you need to make the decisions that you have to make. So the audit opinion is related to the activity as of December 31, 2023. So what that means, as I mentioned, it means that the statements are fairly presented in all material respects. We always remind you that it is not an opinion on internal controls or an opinion on any kind of fraud investigation. They are completely separate audits. What we do is just the normal required annual financial audit in order to submit the DCD report to the state. Also included in your financial statements is what's called the management discussion and analysis, or what we call the MD&A, because we use acronyms for everything. That is prepared by management. It's something that is not allowed to be prepared by us, the auditor. It must be prepared internally by management. What we do is provide Daisy with the audited numbers, and she turns that into the management discussion and analysis that's included in the financial statements. That gives a little bit more comparative information where your financial statements are singular year. The management discussion and analysis also includes the previous year. And it also has a section that kind of talks about trends of the township, challenges, things like that. So it just gives management an opportunity to kind of help explain some details that otherwise wouldn't be recorded or reported in the financial statements just because of the requirements of what can and can't be in the actual financial statements themselves. So looking at the numbers here quick, a couple slides. Your governmental activities, which this is where we bring on any capital assets and then any debt, if you would have any, would be reported in these numbers. So here essentially is your general fund, capital reserve activity, and your highway aid. So you can see overall an increase in your current assets. Essentially, that's just an increase in cash. I mentioned you had surpluses in your funds, so you were able to add to your reserves there, increase in cash. Your non-current assets are your capital assets. So you did have a slight decrease there. Even though you did have some capital purchase activity, your depreciation expense on your existing assets just reduced down that net value. You didn't have any liabilities this year, and so you can see your overall net position at just over $3.4 million. Your business type activities, which in your case is just the solid waste fund, you only have one fund that qualifies for that kind of reporting. And they're a very small increase in your current assets, a couple $100 that you added to your overall cash. Your non-current assets, again, are capital assets. You had a purchase, I believe, 2 years ago that still has some net residual value associated with that. The next slide, then, is your general fund analysis. So this is looking at 2022 to 2023, and then 2023 to your budget. So you can see here overall decrease in your revenue, essentially driven by not receiving ARPA funds anymore. So in 21 and 22, they split the ARPA disbursements in half. So you received one payment in 21, one in 22. That ended. That is now not going to be repeated in the future. So that's the reason for the decrease there. If you look at just in total revenue from prior year to current year, that is the reason for the decrease. You did also have a decrease in expenses, mainly related to the projects that you did, or I should say didn't do. Essentially just the projects that were approved and paid for in 23, you just had less of that activity. Partly again because of utilizing the ARPA funds in the past, you didn't have them in 23, so partly related to just the timing of when you had that activity that you were doing. From a budget standpoint, the main takeaway is just the budgeted tax revenue was lower than the actual, and that's been historically how it's been for the township. You budget fairly conservatively for your taxes, especially your earned income tax and your transfer tax, which is when for property sales, because there's somewhat of unpredictability there, so you always budget pretty conservatively for that. So you have historically brought in a little bit more than you expected from a budget standpoint. So that was that variance there. The next slide is just a little bit of a narrative of what I just talked about, so kind of just a repeat, but just there in writing for you as a reminder. Capital reserve on the next slide. This fund, essentially The main takeaway for this fund is the interest income. You did have an increase in interest income across the board with all your funds. You have always been very good at trying to get the best rates of return. Now that rates are starting to go back up, you're taking advantage of that. And so that has been seen in your increase in interest income. And so the capital reserve fund is no different. That's where you house a lot of your reserves for future expenses that will be incurred. So you have significant reserves in there to invest. And so you had an increase overall from just under $5,000 in 2022 to almost $30,000 in 2023. The other part of that fund is really just the transfers. Every year you have transfers in and out, transfers in to save for future expenses, to transfer based on the taxes that you collected, and then transfers out, if necessary, back to the general fund to pay for any projects that you have going on. So this year you did net a transfer out. Last year was a transfer in because of the ARPA activity, but overall this year, for the most part, a net transfer out. Most of that essentially is related to the transfer to the solid waste fund to help subsidize that fund and cover cost. Your next slide is your highway aid fund analysis. So here, your revenue essentially is interest income, and your intergovernmental revenue is your liquid fuels receipt, and then your expenses are just whatever cost you pay out of that fund. So this year, for the most part, you paid out what you brought in, saving the existing reserves for the most part that you had in there. So you can see overall a positive change in that fund of just under $4,000 when you factor in the money that came in from the liquid fuels and interest and factor out the payments to vendors for road projects. The next slide is your solid waste analysis. So here, similarly, again with the general fund, you can see the 2022 comparison to 23, and then 23 to the budget. Overall, you had about a 3% increase in your revenue, which is your charges for service, and a 4% increase in your expenses, mainly related to the contracted services. Essentially, just most of your expenses come from the contract you have for waste collection, and so you're bound to pay those fees, and they are increasing based on the contract. So you had an increase there, obviously was budgeted for, but you did have an increase in those expenses. You had interest income, and then a little bit of intergovernmental revenue there. You can see overall you had technically an operating loss, but the transfer in from the capital reserve helped subsidize that loss, and you came out with a change in that position of $227. Compared to your budget, which you budgeted a net nothing change, that was above the budget from what you were expecting. The next slide is your total equity. So here just gives you a better idea of where all your reserves are. In all of your funds, you have some kind of restricted or committed activity going on. Restriction is essentially external restrictions from whether it's your tax assessment or for example, liquid fuels is automatically restricted. You can only use it on certain things. You can't use it for just anything you want. So those kind of things are recorded as restricted. The committed sections is an internal restriction, if you will, where you as the board have designated some funds for certain purposes. And there's a detailed footnote in your financial statements that spells out all of the different commitments that you have for various different things. But that's where the bulk of your capital reserve activity is, and a little bit in your general fund. And then the rest in the general fund is unassigned, which in 2023 is just over $1.1 million. And that is whatever's necessary. You can use it for whatever needs the township has. And so that's what is kept for that liquid, if you will, reserves for whatever expenses come down the line. The next couple slides are your footnotes. So we always remind you that note 1 is your summary of significant accounting policies. This note doesn't change unless you change your accounting policies, but it is a pretty good read as far as summarizing how the township works. It explains the different funds you have, how you operate, things like that. So it's very informative, but again, it really doesn't change unless you change or implement new policies. So that's very similar to previous years. The next big footnote you have is note 4, which is your capital assets. So here you can see for the governmental activities, which again is your general fund, capital reserve, highway aid, you did have some capital activity in there as far as capital purchases, but your depreciation expense exceeded that. So you had a net decrease in the value. And your business type activities, your solid waste, you didn't have any activity from an addition standpoint, you just had depreciation expense during the year. As far as your management letter is concerned, this is the one where I mentioned if we had any suggestions for improvement or any deficiencies we needed to communicate to you, that's where it would be in that letter. There were no findings that needed to be reported. It was just the normal reminder of the small office staff that you have. Also in that letter are graphs. So most of the graphs are also in this presentation, but they are in that letter as well to refer to. But the graphs show a little bit better history of the township. It shows you a 5-year analysis from 2023 back until 2019, and in your significant areas. So the first one is cash and investments, and you can see overall, for the most part, you have an increase, as you can see, especially your capital reserve. Solid waste, very minimal. Highway aid just kind of depended on the reserves that you were increasing. General fund up and down a little bit, but not too significant. The next slide is your revenues versus expenses. So this one shows that for the most part, your revenues and your expenses are well matched each year. You, for the most part, as much as possible, try to pass a balanced budget or very close to it. And you can see here, you've been pretty successful at not having any significant one way or the other, whether it's a surplus or a deficit. In the past 5 years, you've been fairly break even. Your revenue breakdown, the next 2 slides are your revenue and expense breakdowns. Revenue, really very consistent over the past few years. You had a spike there in 21 and 22 for intergovernmental. That was the ARPA funds you received in those 2 years, but otherwise pretty similar. Expense-wise, really the only more volatile fluctuation or category is your public works highways. So obviously, depending on the projects you do and the cost of those projects can really fluctuate the expenses you have each year. So every year is different from a standpoint of that particular category. It just depends on what projects you have going on during that year. The next 2 graphs are just 2023, and they're the pie graph. So it kind of shows you a little bit better visual representation of where the money is coming in and where the money is going out. So for revenue purposes, more than half of your revenue for 2023 came from taxes. And that's all taxes, that's real estate, that's earned income, that's transfer tax. That's all kinds of taxes, but essentially it just shows that you are essentially, the township is funded by taxes. You don't get a lot of state or federal funding, so you rely on your local taxes to cover your costs. From an expense standpoint, the 2 main expenses that you have, which aren't uncommon for a small municipality, you have your public works, for your highways, all of your road activity, and then because you have a solid waste fund, the expenses related to that, again, mostly the contracted services, but it is an expensive service that you provide, and so obviously you can see that here with over about a quarter of your expenses going towards that service. The next slide is just a quick summary of the second letter that you have in your packet. This is our required communication letter where we list any significant estimates or disclosures in the financial statements. There were no disagreements with management, no difficulties in performing the audit. It acknowledges that you did sign the management representation letter and provided that to us. And that's just a letter that acknowledges that you provided us everything we needed for the audit. You didn't withhold any information, anything like that. And then any adjustments that are made from the time we get your initial numbers to what you see in the financial statements you have in front of you tonight, they are attached to that letter. And there are some that are informational for reporting purposes that you will not make internally in your accounting software. We just provide them to show you how the numbers were changed to get to what you see on the financial statements. But some of them you do need to make, and Daisy will be making those to make sure that you have good carryover numbers for 2024. So then the last slide is just in summary, just a reminder of the unmodified audit opinion. So the goal of an audit is to have that unmodified audit opinion. You were able to add to your reserves in each fund this year, and no reportable findings or suggestions for improvement that needed to be communicated.
Okay, wonderful. Questions? Sean?
No.
Daisy? No?
Daisy got all her questions out already.
Yes.
Daisy had a front row seat, so.
Yeah.
Any questions from residents?
No one else.
John?
Yeah. I was wondering, I got a quick glimpse of the budget since it only came out today at 2:30. So, but I was wondering, what were the budgeted versus actual transfers for the solid waste funds? Do you know those? I mean, it looks like it's 30, and then 30 was budgeted. 16 about was what was transferred in.
So the 16, it was a net almost 16. There were transfers in and out.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a transfer in for 16,000, which came basically that was the expected subsidy to help cover the cost internally, physical cash transferred over to help cover the cost of that fund. The rest of it, that nets it down to the 15.8-ish that the actual result was. That is, while there are payroll and related benefit expenses charged to the fund throughout the year, what we do as part of the audit is a true-up of that activity based on actual salaries and existing benefits that are charged. And we kind of do somewhat of an analysis of what was paid in for pension and payroll taxes. And there's always a little bit of a change to kind of help, not necessarily, it is a change, but not to help the fund, but to allocate sufficient expenses to that fund for the time and for the salaries and benefits that it takes them, meaning the office staff, to manage that fund. So that was an extra few $100s that netted against that. So it was partly the 16,000 physical cash that was transferred in, and then this adjustment, the audit adjustment that's made, is not a physical cash change. It's just a reporting activity to push whatever expenses needed over or back, depending on which way it goes, into the solid waste fund.
Okay. To go along with that, I guess the transfer in from the general fund, is there a reason we're using general fund money, which is unrestricted or only committed, versus using what's in the fund, which is restricted fully for that fund? Is there a reason why you would do that?
Can you repeat that? I'm not sure what you're...
I guess the general fund money that we're transferring in, that would be unrestricted or just committed funds, correct?
Well, technically, normally what happens is the money comes directly from the capital reserve fund. Because of solid waste money that was initially transferred to the capital reserve fund in previous years, so that's why it kind of comes from that fund to help subsidize, because it went to that fund in a previous year. But in 2023, the money went from the capital reserve fund to the general fund first. So then it just got moved to the solid waste. So it wasn't actually, it didn't start in the general fund, it wasn't general fund money that was transferred in. It was the money that came from the capital reserve fund that then should have ultimately gone to the solid waste fund.
Okay. I guess with that though, the money that was in the capital reserve fund, that wasn't the restricted money though, correct?
No.
So that was just committed money.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I'm getting at was why would we use just committed money versus restricted money in that fund? But
Yep.
I guess
Yeah,
that's not your question, you're just making sure it's used.
Yeah.
That'd be a question for them. Okay, and I guess the last thing, you say we have multiple, everything went positive on everything. Do you have a net of what the overall was, our expenditures versus revenue and what that total was, or approximate? The total positive?
Yeah, let me just, so, go to the fund level here. No, I think that might be it right there.
Okay.
This one. 147,000 is, 147,747 is the governmental, the net governmental.
The overall, the whole thing,
governmental,
okay.
And then the $227 for the solid waste, so both of
Yeah.
those together.
Okay.
Is the overall positive
All right.
for the township as.
Yeah, I have a hard time looking at it to see, like, okay, this got
Yeah.
transferred out, this got transferred in, capital reserve went up and down, yeah, okay. All right, that's all I had, so thank you very
Okay.
much. Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Hearing none, that was wonderful, Tina, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tina.
All right, so we are in the process of getting the DCD report submitted to the state, which is not the financials, that's something completely different. But the DCD report is just the required annual report that the state, the Department of Community and Economic Development like to see. That is due April 1st, so we will make sure that gets submitted on your behalf by then. And then you'll also, I think you already have copies of the report, but I can provide, we always get a confirmation. I can give you that, and then once you log in, you'll see it'll go from pending to editable, because you could change it if you need to, but yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
Okay, thanks again, Tina.
All right, if anything comes up in the meantime, let me know, but otherwise, until next year.
Thank you again.
All right?
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to municipal reports, zoning code enforcement. A report from Glaze Associates dated March 19th. There were 2 items on there, 2 zoning permits. For a total of 0, there's no invoice, right? So-
There was one on, but it isn't for those two. We're always like a month behind. 2,300 surveyor mapping.
Okay,
But that
okay,
is not the two zoning.
No.
okay. Okay, so, that'll be up here. Someone wants to take a look. Sewage enforcement report from Lenny Sizer.
Total of about- You see?
No, there's not on this one. Should be 330.
It just says total was
Oh,
paid,
yeah.
but it's blank.
Does, it's right there, it's
330?
330.
Yep, okay, I just want to make
So
sure
you
I
want to
wasn't missing it.
Make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to pay, to receive the report and pay the bill of $330 to Grier Siebert Associates.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's approved. I'm just gonna write that in there,
Okay, that'll be fine.
since it's gonna be
You
sitting out
just
here.
missed it.
Yeah.
Moving on to road report, Brad, please.
Yes. A lot of time was designated for cleaning up after the high winds, cleaning up the roadsides and trees, and clean drains throughout the township. Most of the trucks, we still have one that needs done. and we helped over at the park on that situation over there. Install new street signs. I don't know if everybody's seen that or not. Put a lot of street signs up. And we fixed a flat tire on the tractor mower and deliver trash cans throughout the township.
Okay, thanks, Brad.
Yep.
Rec board report, Nancy.
Okay, well, the first two upcoming events are listed on your agenda. The only thing I'll add is for April 11th History Night, if you're from the township or your parents grew up in the township and you have old photos to share, please bring them along. And then for the fishing derby, the fishing starts at 9 a.m. and we would like everyone there around 8:30 for registration.
Is that everything?
That's
All
everything so
right,
far.
thank you, Nancy. Appreciate that. Emergency management report, Mr. Cassidy. Of course.
You sound like it's special.
Yeah.
That I'm here.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, I understand that we've had the assistant emergency management coordinator has resigned or quit, whatever. And so I will endeavor to recruit somebody to participate in that role. And it would require some training, so some commitment. I think probably the best resource would be to check with the fire service in the community, see if any of the fire service volunteers might have an interest in participating. I have a new neighbor, but no knowledge of the township really, although I think that can be overcome. And maybe a couple other neighbors that I haven't talked to about it, but I could. So I will endeavor to locate a possible person to fill that role as an assistant coordinator. I would actually suggest today, if anybody that's in here today that has knowledge of anyone that is familiar with how government operates and would be interested in possibly filling the role. There's not a lot to do day to day. It's primarily keeping track of what's going on if there's an emergency that overwhelms the local emergency services. If you have anybody in mind, let them know and have them contact Daisy here at the office to let us know of any interest. Otherwise, I'll do what I can to see if I can find somebody to fill that role.
thank you, Jim.
That appointment doesn't need to be appointed by the governor, just you. Is that
Okay.
correct? I believe that's.
Well, I'm not sure about that. Probably that is the case.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it just needs appointed by the board, but they need all that training and certification.
Right. Or be willing to participate. It's highly unlikely that we would run across anybody that already has all that. So once they're in, I think they can be in the role without having completed all of those courses, as long as they're in line to do that.
As long as we're working on it.
Yes.
Okay, it's just been a while since you have been,
Forever.
You've been hard to hear for a while.
Well, thanks, Jim, that's
Well,
appreciated.
certainly.
Okay, moving on to financial treasurer's report, Daisy, please.
The general checking began with a balance February 1st of $139,555.94, had receipts of $133,857.80, expenditures of $57,557.41, interest of $189.56, leaving us a balance March 1st in the general checking account of $216,045.89. We have a checking account at Penny and Bank, and it had a only interest activity and had a balance March 1st of $2,307.30.
3 cents. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm
Okay.
still top of page. Got you, you're
With the
good, you're
interest
good,
on.
my apologies, yep.
American Rescue Plan Funds, money market account, these are the monies that are not into the brokerage CDs. We left a little bit there just in case you needed something, plus we need an account to dump those brokerage CDs into. So that had only interest activity and had a balance March 1st of $2,872.37. Bank of Landisburg General Savings Account had only interest activity and had a balance March 1st, $2,520.65. Liquid Fuels Fund Checking Account had only interest activity and had a balance March 1st of $871.29. Liquid Fuels Money Market Account had only interest activity and had a balance March 1st of $2,680.54. And you will hear me report next month of the allocation monies that came into the money market account. They have already been put into a 3-month CD at 5.2%. I thought we were only going to get 5%, and they gave us 5.2%. So we'll have that in there for 3 months, and then we'll put it liquid into our checking account, which is getting 1.3%. And we'll end up netting about what we did, if not a little bit more because of the 5.2%. So I just want to let you know those funds were received from the state. The only other thing I wanted to say was that the first quarter tax distributions for the fire companies, the ambulance, and the library are on the register for approval, and they'll be sent out tomorrow. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Daisy. Old business, approval of the 2023 Planning Commission Annual Report. I didn't have a chance to read it last time we had talked about it, so it got tabled. Daisy sent a copy of it to me. I looked through it. Did anybody else have comments?
Looks good to me.
Good to me.
The motion?
I'll make a motion to, do we have to approve it, I guess?
Brad, do you second?
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Annual report from the Planning Commission is approved and greatly appreciated.
You want real business?
Um,
I was going to say probably that.
Yeah, moving on to the next item, tractor mower purchase. Brad, can you give us, we've got some of the quotes here in front of us. Can you give us kind of a summary?
Yeah, well, I got in touch with Landmark, and they sent me a, you got the,
Daisy sent me an email.
okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah, it was like 10,000 in parts and 18,000 labor.
We had 19.5 for labor, but now the guy told me, he says, take that price with like a grain of
Yeah,
salt.
Yeah, till you get in there.
Because he said, I'm telling you, when we open these things up, he says, it's a lot more money than what is anticipated here, so that's what you have.
Okay. So that was, correct me if I'm wrong, Brad, that was to,
That's pretty much the
Repair.
quote of the tractor, right?
yeah, the tractor itself, not the
Right,
mower.
right.
Nothing to do with the mower. It's the
He
board.
put down here to rebuild the pump on the front of the tractor.
For the
Was-
mower.
For the mower,
Yeah.
Okay.
But pretty much that's just for the tractor.
Okay.
And that does not address any framework or anything
That
either.
does not address any of that, because he says, you can't,
No, there's
there's no way.
no way, that's hard, I mean.
You can't
that's-
find that.
Yeah.
So are we aware of frame damage or, no? I'm
I'm
assuming we're
not
not.
aware of it
Yeah,
now,
okay,
no,
yeah.
from what the mower has
Once they-
done in past, I mean, the mower, we fixed that mower so many times for stress cracks, so it's there with the tractor too, so.
So a new mower, at least on this quote, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
a new mower, just the mower itself, attachment. To put it on a new tractor is 91,500,
Yeah.
91,000.
I think, yep.
So are we safe to assume if we were to put a new mower on the existing tractor, we'd be looking at about the same? Or, because that's a rear mount on the new mower It's a side mount on that.
That would be, I don't know. You'd have to ask those guys how to do that. I don't know how you would do that. I don't know. And I think it'd be foolish to spend all that money and put it on a full tractor.
Well, so I know it's 4,800 hours, right, on the
No,
existing?
it has over five.
No, it's over 5,000.
5,000, okay, well.
That-
50
that's
51
not-
something.
That's not normal 5,000 hours. That's
5163.
That's
5,163 hard hours.
hard hours with a mower on. That mower beats that tractor, I'm telling you.
Oh,
It does.
not down.
It's not normal hours. It's not like a farmer taking it down the road, coming down the field plowing. It's completely different. No, I checked with them up there, and John Deere has a tractor now, when we were up there for these prices, they have a 5,000 series tractor. Now, John Deere came out with it that it uses no DEF. It's 100 horsepower.
Okay.
It uses no DEF. But John Deere re-engineered the engine so it does not use DEF.
Okay.
So we can get away from that, okay? So that's a big expense there,
Yep.
to not have DEF anymore.
Is that similar in price, or he doesn't have a number yet?
I don't think I priced that out, that one. There'll be 3 quotes. I got so much,
Yeah.
I mean,
Can you pull all, Daisy, you have all this electronically? Can you pull all that we have together so that I can put it in the spreadsheet?
but it's gonna
Just
be
see-
different now because that tractor, those 2 tractors that you're looking
Yeah.
at have DEF. Okay, this
Right,
one will
right.
not have DEF.
Right.
Okay, and the first tractor was a 6,000 series, okay? That was a big tractor, and we didn't want that because it's too big. It's way too big, it's way bigger than our tractor, okay? So I don't want that because it's too wide. So the next one was a 5,000, I think, series
That's-
tractor.
yeah,
But
5105,
that
yeah.
had DEF on it, okay?
Okay.
But now they come out with another one since, it doesn't have DEF on it,
But it's still a 5,000 series
but it's still
tractor.
5,000 series tractor, right?
And it's 100 horsepower. What's the 4,400?
100 horsepower. It's the one we have.
104 rated if you go by the John Deere. So it would be comparable.
Right.
Okay. So now, I was at Hoover's last week, just something for my truck, not looking at tractors and having to talk to a guy there. Something I hadn't thought about. We've got a side mount on one currently. And now, you know, I wouldn't know because I've never driven that tractor. He said the ones that are on the back, it's harder on the operator because you're turning. Now, I don't know if that's your experience. If
No, you don't want,
agree.
we don't want none on the back, there's no way I want none on the
I
back.
thought the one that we did quote,
The side one, no, that hangs on the back when you travel with it.
okay,
Yeah, but it hangs off to the side like this one.
okay, I'm sure, because
But
that
it
was something he
transports-
pointed out.
it transports in the back.
Okay,
So like if you wanna put a snow blower on or something on the loader, you can have it sitting on the back,
okay,
okay? You don't have to take it off.
okay.
Jim,
Yeah, Bob.
about a year ago, I approached the board about buying the tractor and the mower. And you could have done it then. You didn't do it.
That's right.
Spent a lot more money. And
We haven't
this
spent
is-
it yet, Bob.
You spent money on repairs for the old tractor. As a citizen, I believe you better quit tabling this. 3 of you get together, call the manager in, sit down and talk to him what you want, and get the best price you can get. You could have got it, when I told you about it, you could have got it that year,
All right,
and
Bob.
paid for it, and
Yeah.
paid for it when you
Okay.
got it, but now it's a table.
Bob, I'm not gonna argue with that point that you made. However, using your own logic and what Brad just indicated, had we bought that tractor last year, as you just suggested, we would have a DEF tractor.
I understand,
We
but
don't
you
want-
didn't know that then.
That's right, so
Now
maybe
you do.
holding off.
Now,
So, anyway,
are we gonna
the board's
do
decision
something
was
about
to
a
hold
tractor
off
mower?
on the purchase. So let's get the quote from the Valley Ag, or Land Pro.
Land Pro.
And is Land Pro, is there a reason why we use only Land Pro? I don't know who else.
Well, they do the best service.
You won't find a better dealership than them, so.
Okay, so let's get the quote on
It
the
used to
one
be.
without DEF,
They could plot out.
and then we can discuss all three of these and have them together on a spreadsheet.
You
know what
guys
the
wanna
total
get the
cost is.
quote? I got the last two.
Yeah, send me his info. Send me his
Yeah.
info. I'll reach out to him.
Do you have any idea what that model number is?
Not done, it was a five.
You know it's a 5,000
Yeah, it's a
series.
5,000, it's 100 horsepower, so.
Is it Tom up there that you're dealing with?
I was,
Tony.
what was his name?
Oh, I thought it was Jeremy.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
if you can send me the info, I'll reach out to
That
him.
Land Pro, it should be Tony.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
That's who our family deals with.
Okay, so tabling it for now, till we get the quote
Oh,
on
this says-
the non-DEF tractor.
Tony Rogers, maybe.
Okay, we need a motion.
Yeah.
We don't need a motion to table something. Okay, I'll make a motion that we table it until we get more information and discuss it at the next board.
Well, do we need an update, do we need an updated quote for the
Yes,
mower
we need
too?
an
You need an
updated
updated quote for
Yeah.
that too.
Because this was the last October.
Yeah, so you better get for both,
Okay,
so,
Yep.
just with that.
okay. If you could send me the contact info, Brad, I'll reach out to him. Okay, so I'll make that motion. Do we have a
I'll second
Do
it.
a second, all in favor? Okay, issue is tabled. Thank you for getting this information. Remember, as it is.
And I do want to let you know that I was in a webinar today for ARP monies, and they suggested that we spend the money. They said that more than, I bet, there were two girls with PSATs. One was Holly Fishel, and the other one, her name is Katie Lisa. And they just walked us through doing the reporting and such. And they're recommending that, I found out something new today, that I really need to put a project in there, because something I know that we're going to do, such as give the fire companies additional funds. So that's a project I can at least put in there. They said the treasurer likes to see something, because we had nothing last year, and so far we had, well, the year before, nor last year. And it has to be expended or used by obligated. And they said it might be a little more complicated. Since we went with the standard allowance, it's pretty broad. They really have less of the restrictions on it. Everybody will tell you that, and I'm grateful, because when it started out, it sounded like a nightmare. But we can use it on government services. So I'm not suggesting we do this, but you could use it on payroll, workers' comp, property insurance, government services, whatever we need to use it for. And they suggest, now this is just their suggestion, like say we would order, because they said people were having trouble, they were going to buy a truck or a piece of, big equipment. And what's happening is they're ordering it, and it's taking a year and a half. They said some people that ordered in '22 are just now expecting their delivery this year. So you can, as part of the report, you can obligate it. But then if it's obligated and not closed by the report time next year, which would be 2025, there's going to be additional closure reports and such. So they said, even say you're using, I'm just going to say $100,000, which probably wouldn't buy much, but $100,000 for a major piece of equipment, they would suggest that instead of putting that project in there, even though that's really what you're going to, that's what.
Use it for,
You have the additional revenue, as you can see from our audit, which has boosted us up, and now it's time to spend it down. And so what you would do is you would take that 100,000, you didn't get your equipment, you might have a deposit or something, it's obligated, but I can't do the report because it's not closed down.
Right.
Okay.
Because we didn't get it. And so they're suggesting that you take that, change your project. And a project is not just like a road project. A project is anything you spend it for. That's how the treasury is looking at it. So whether it's insurance, so you could pay $25,000 of our insurance, and you would take that 100,000 and just distribute it through government services to spend it. And what happens is all that money that you had budgeted out of general monies,
Then you can fill
then you can fill in with your cost for your mower or your truck.
whatever it is.
And that's what they were, explaining to.
And I'm sorry, Daisy, who are they?
Holly?
No, I don't need their name.
Oh,
PSATs.
PSATs,
PSATs,
okay,
It was a PSATs webinar. They're always very good and very informative. Those girls do a lot, filtering through all of the, excuse me, but the baloney,
Okay,
the red tape.
all right. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
Okay, moving on to new business, advertise the ordinance to close Grier Point Road for Community Day on Saturday, June 8th from 9 AM to 9 PM. I'm sorry, from 9 AM to 8 PM. Make a motion to advertise for that ordinance. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Brad, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Advertisement is approved. Authorize advertisement of road bids for acceptance at the May 21st meeting.
Since our meeting's early in April, I thought that's too soon, so we can get them advertised and then we'll have time to, get them to us. And you'll have time to review them.
Do a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Advertisement for the road bids is approved. Accept rec board resignation. Who resigned?
Yeah.
Dana Graupensberger.
Resignation.
Need to resign from the rec board immediately due to some, okay, I make a motion to accept Dana Graupensberger's resignation from the rec board. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Sean, second, all in favor?
Aye.
With regrets?
With regret.
Yeah. And then the next one is appoint rec board member.
Yes,
Brittany
Baxa.
Baxa, B-A-K-S-A.
They moved into the home up at 960 or 940.
Where, the herbs are, they there. You don't know where that is.
No.
But it's near where Freddie Adams used to live.
No, okay, yeah, okay.
It's a big brick home there.
And she's expressed an
Oh,
interest
is it the one right
though.
next to us right now?
Did she come to a last
Or
meeting?
two down?
No,
No?
Two down.
Two, okay.
no. We invited her to the last rec board meeting, but she had to work late and she was, just couldn't make it that night. But you know, she's expressing an interest and
Yeah, she actually called the township. And they were only in the township maybe a month after they moved in. She was very interested. And she works at the museum in Harrisburg, so she's really community-minded and very helpful. I think she's a good addition.
Awesome. Okay, well, make that motion to appoint as a new rec board member Brittany Baxa. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Sean, second. All in favor?
Aye.
And that will be
Appointment is approved.
for a partial term. She'll be filling Dana's.
For Dana,
Okay.
yeah.
I think it ends December 31st of 27.
So I think so. I think it's like.
You know, because I had looked at it. you
Yeah, I
know.
remember we looked at it.
Again, authorize advertisement of road bids. Is that on there?
Huh?
That was on there twice.
Is it on there
It
twice?
It was on there twice. I think we don't have
Oh,
to do
good,
it
we don't
again.
need to do it again.
Okay, item F, codes matter, and this is regarding 22 Bellview Road. So, talking with our solicitor, and I believe you've spoken with our township engineer and codes enforcement officer, and so we want, the board needs to get some kind of an analysis, assessment, characterization of.
Yeah, so I talked to the township engineer. I think the first step with regard to this property, because he hasn't yet done this, is to do an analysis, so like a report, telling us what the condition of this property is. And that'll then guide us as to our options at this point. So whatever we do in the future, whatever steps we take, we're gonna need him give his opinion with regards to, the property and its condition.
Okay.
So I think with, if the board so desires, if they just do a motion to authorize the engineer to perform that report, hopefully by next meeting or before that, we'll have that, and we'll have some options mapped out if we have to do anything at all.
Who takes care of that? Like, is that something you guys take care of?
I would have, yeah, after he does the,
Okay.
the.
But you appoint him to do that, or no?
No, you guys, so he's the engineer, so the board
Oh,
would
he's
have to
okay,
authorize,
okay.
he's your engineer.
Oh, okay.
Max
I'm with you.
Stoner,
Okay, I'm with
Relations
you.
Association.
Okay, I thought it was somebody separate other than Max.
No,
Okay,
he has
okay.
the ability to do it.
Okay, all right.
He knows the property, but
Yep.
we would need that to move forward.
Yep.
That
Gotcha.
analysis.
Okay, I'll make that motion to approve authorizing Glace Associates
Yep.
to do an assessment on 22 Bellview Road to provide the board an assessment on the condition and. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Brad, second. All in favor? Aye. Okay, authorization is approved. Thanks for that, Mike. Moving on to announcements. March 29th, Good Friday. The office will be closed. There's no change in weekly trash collection. April 11th is an evening of history with Brian Hummel at 7 p.m. at the Township Municipal Building, sponsored by the Rec Board. And if you haven't enjoyed Brian's storytelling in the past, he's really good. He does a great job. April 23rd is primary election day from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. May 3rd and May 4th, bulk spring cleanup, Friday from 6 in the morning till 1:45 in the afternoon, and then Saturday immediately following at 8 a.m. and ending at 12 noon. Then May 18th is the fishing derby from 9 a.m. till 10:30 at the Sportsman's Association in Marysville, and the rain date will be May 19th from 1 to 2:30 in the afternoon.
The other thing you might
Yeah.
want to mention is our next meeting is early, and I didn't put that on, it's April 16th because of Election Day.
Okay, thank you for that, Daisy. So, next Board of Supervisor meeting, is it going early? It's gonna be April 16th, same time, 7 p.m., same location, just the date is changing. Thanks for that, Daisy. Okay, moving on to approval and payment of the bills.
General fund checks 17908 to 17932 in the amount of $33,194.16. There were no expense checks voided. Payroll checks 8326 to 8331 in the amount of $5,419.40. Payroll checks 8332 to 8337 in the amount of $4,840.63. There were no payroll checks voided.
Okay, the only one, and I think it's right, 7922 to John Deere Financial, 5 gallons of High Guard. I did buy that a while ago and I know it was ungodly expensive. Is it $795, right, for 5 gallons? Okay.
Well,
just
and then
wasn't
some
sure
other
about that
oil
typo.
too. I don't know, there were two,
Okay,
but the main thing was the
High Guards, yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna have another one because I bought a 55-gallon barrel then too, because that there oil there was used for the truck, because remember I told you the cap fell off? The cap fell off when I was plowing, they got water in the system, so we had to repeatedly keep draining it, okay? Till we got the
To get all the water out
Yeah,
of it.
yeah.
So that fluid there all went to,
Yeah,
there's nothing you can do. I
Right.
mean, you just gotta keep repeating
Right.
draining. So that, you got used up that way.
Yep.
It uses up a lot of fluid.
Oh, yeah. It's-
But
Okay, no, I wasn't aware that that happened, but hey, stuff does happen. Okay, that's it. Thanks for clarifying that expense. Make a motion to approve payment of the bills. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Brad, second. All in favor?
comment,
Whoop,
just a quick
sorry.
comment here, whatever. Should we do something different because of 17931?
Oh, payment to Brad?
Don't
Uh,
want to get him in trouble.
Oh, that's true.
yeah, okay, so make a motion to approve payment of the bills without
Right.
check number 17931 payable to Brad Sloop. Make that motion. Do we have a second?
I'll
Your
second.
second, okay.
You got it.
I think that was, yeah, that was without, so Brad can,
Okay,
you second.
I second
All in
it.
favor?
Aye.
Okay, yeah, okay.
I'll make a motion to pay check 17931.
Second, I'll second that.
Okay.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, payment of the bills, thank you for that.
Thanks.
Yep, thanks for catching that, Sean.
Yeah, don't just keep everything in order.
Appreciate that. Okay, citizen participation is the second portion. John Schulze, you're up first.
Yeah, I know you talked about the road work getting done. Are we gonna make sure we have in there that the contractor's supposed to do it between school ending and school starting?
That's always part of the contract.
Well, it wasn't last year, that's why I wanted to make sure we got it.
Yeah, I think it was part of the contract.
You just
It
didn't
just,
adhere to
it
it?
just did not occur.
Okay,
That's the difference.
okay, just wanna make sure we
Yeah, yeah, we always try to
instill
do
that to him, that he's supposed to do that.
Yeah,
So I brought this up to Tina about the unrestricted funds, just committed funds being used for the trash. Is there a reason we're using the just committed funds or the unrestricted funds, even though they're designated or committed to trash? All it takes is you guys changing it to use to something else. But the restricted funds that are actually in the solid waste fund, that can only be used for solid waste. Why? Is there a reason we aren't using those up first? Because we can't take them out and use them somewhere else, unlike the committed funds.
Is there any response to that? I
No,
don't.
I.
I mean, can we use those instead of pulling it in from outside?
I'll ask
Yeah.
my accounting advisor if you know of some explanation, not to put you on the spot. I don't know if you had a thought on
I
it.
think we hashed this out before, and I don't know if I don't think there's a reason, but I know that we discussed that if we, if we use all of the reserve that's in the solid waste fund, it's really not gonna save the residents a lot of money per their bill. As you recall, John, when we talked about that, so I'm not sure why this is important to you. Or, I don't understand why this is important to you, where it comes from. It's legit
Well,
where it's coming
yeah.
from and going to, so I just wanna know what your reason
Well, no,
is.
yeah, you don't have to explain, and I appreciate that, but,
Okay.
because I am curious why it is important to you. But at the end of the day, I am curious, are you suggesting that something underhanded is being done?
Again,
That's
no.
always,
I'm-
if that's your
No, I'm
suggestion, I
not-
wanna know that.
Again, no, this is not
Okay,
underhanded. You-
Okay.
Right away you asked
Okay.
that, but that's all right.
Well, because
I-
that's important, John, if that's your suggestion.
No.
Otherwise,
I'm
if it's
asking-
just a mechanics of accounting,
Yeah,
it's up to the township how that's done. It's, I
Right.
just want the public to be aware
I can
that you're not
explain
suggesting
it.
that it was underhanded.
I'm only asking because restricted funds can only be used for that. Committed funds, we just put it into the reserve saying it's for trash. They can be changed. Normally I would think you'd want to use up the funds for that fund because they are stuck just in that fund. That's it. Where the committed could be used for anything else. I know it's still just money being used, but this is money that's locked up to that.
Okay.
And we keep adding to it because, we transfer in and then we end up with, the minute 200, 300 every year.
Okay.
But then they're locked up. We can never use them again. So that's why I'm saying,
Okay, but
We
it's
should
really
be-
just, it's an accounting
It's an
preference
accounting
of
thing.
how to
Right.
do it efficiently. So,
right.
again, there's
But
nothing,
it's just restricted versus that we could use for something else.
It's a
So-
way to budget it. You can take your
Yeah.
capital reserve, and we are losing solid waste monies. Those monies that are in there were from the purchase of the truck. And through the years, we've gotten interest on it. So that's where it's coming from. The people that purchase our truck, not our,
Right.
so that money is in there. What we could do, they're saying you're supposed to have a balanced budget. So to pull money in, you can't pull money from an asset. You've got to pull it from the capital reserve or from another fund if you want to donate to the proprietary fund. So what we could do is what we do with the liquid fuels fund is have a deficit budget and spend down that fund balance that's in the solid waste fund. So it is just a method of budgeting and making it look clean that we have a balanced budget.
Okay.
But if you
Yes.
wanted to do a deficit
Yeah.
budget,
You
we
could let
certainly
it,
could do
Okay.
you
that.
could let it go
But
down.
either way, it's
Either
proper.
way,
It's fine.
you're taking
Yeah.
money from
Yeah.
the solid waste
Okay.
fund.
And I'm not saying it's anything wrong, it's just, you would think you'd prefer to use the one that is locked up versus the one that is
You
free,
would think,
that's all.
yeah. Okay.
Anyway,
And again, I wanted to point that out because in the past, and this was years back, about there was some dispute about how trash was being funded and some suggestions of how things were not proper. And that was not the case then, that's not the case now. So I just wanted to be sure that that was understood.
so I was over at the park this week doing work, getting it all, trying to get it up and ready for a ball team, hopefully to use it or something. But I noticed, looked like a window got replaced in the office. I was wondering, was something wrong with it? And if there was, when was it approved? I didn't hear that.
Well, John, we're not gonna get into a back and forth. This is the board meeting, again, so thank you for the comment on that. That's building maintenance.
Oh, well, was there something, was there something wrong with it?
I don't know about the window.
Yeah, it needed replaced.
Like crazy.
Okay.
It needed replaced, that's the bottom line.
Yeah.
It was
Okay, so
originally-
it was not approved anywhere in this, right? You're just saying it's general maintenance? Okay.
2023 budget approved in 2022. The guy just didn't get here.
Okay.
What was that? It was approved at the budget in 2022? Is that what you
It
said?
was approved in the
2023
workshops
budget.
for 23 and 22.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
it just didn't get executed till now.
Right.
Okay. And then the last thing I noticed while working over there, I found out the office isn't open. Yet it says on the website and the door it's supposed to be open at 9, right? So I was wondering, that's a service to the residents that they can come in here, do business, business is being done with the township. So I was, looking at the contract that was just approved, the office is supposed to be open at 9, employees supposed to be in here at 8:30. I was wondering, how is that gonna get rectified so that the service to the residents is done? Or is the office open an hour later?
What does it say that the employee has to be here at 8:30?
Well, I haven't received complaints from somebody yet, unless you're saying you came to do business and somebody wasn't here.
Well,
Okay, but typically, we don't have that. And I know what you're pointing to is, hey, when did Daisy come in? Does she come in on time? She reports to me, and I'm aware that she has, and we all do. It's a one-person operation here, so, we have to keep that in mind. So Daisy has some other things to take care of, as do other employees, as do we, as do you. So we're flexible with her time, and if somebody's gonna complain that she comes in late, I know that there are times when I'll get a township email from Daisy 8 o'clock at night. So it's not like she is, shutting off at the end of the day. She's still working. So if you're thinking that she's,
I agree. She is probably here for the full 8 hours. I'm not saying that. I'm saying if the office is open, says it's open from 9 to 3. I tried to make a right to know request and come in, but I can't come in at 9 when it's best available for me at any time.
Well,
So I'm trying to
if
say,
you wanna
and I'm
come
not
in-
the only one that is making that
If you-
complaint.
If you wish to
So-
come in at the time that right when it opens, when it's on the website, it says, then you know how to contact, and we'll do our best to do it. But again, it's a one-person shop, so.
Right, well, I'm also gonna add though, what does this contract mean though that you guys have with the employee? It says that they're to be here at 8:30. If that's not the case, 9 o'clock isn't the opening, then make it 9:30, put it out,
Well, John,
9:30
we're
to
not gonna
4:30.
discuss the
But
personnel
that's fine.
issues
If-
anymore. I
Okay,
think we've answered your
that's,
question.
I will put it out there, I'm not the only one that notices it, that we can't get here at 9. So, anyway, thank you for letting me comment.
Sure, thank you. Jackie? Comment? No? Okay. Bob Lightner?
Yes. Sit here with interest listening to all this garbage. And as Teena said, it's very small office staff. Daisy?
I'm here one day a week.
Most times 1 day a week. Think she got $30,000 in interest. That didn't come from you guys, it came from her. Many a night, 10 o'clock at night, she's still working on township business. People from the township call Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon. So all these things, I don't think she's stealing time. She's giving more than what she's getting paid for. And this is a fact. She don't write down everything she does at night. But other than that, how do I find out how much John Schulze has cost the township in right to know? Do I have to file a right to know? Because that costs money and we don't have a lot of people to do this.
Okay, well,
You have
anybody
it?
can
I have it right there.
complete a right to know request. I guess we would consult with our solicitor to find out, because again, folks have a right to information, and, but is there a limit to the expense to the township?
You know, everybody pays taxes, gotta make up for disgruntled persons.
I'll take it up with our solicitor after we're done.
Please.
To have a,
And then, when you find out, make it public, so we can put it on Facebook or whatever.
we'll do what's proper.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Okay, well, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
No, sorry.
Brad, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned.